Welcome, everyone. I'm delighted to know that we're 7 of us today, a smaller crowd than the other time because it was in Spanish, and so it was there are more people in Latin America, obviously, than in the Caribbean, and so I guess that explains a lot of why we have a smaller audience today. But being smaller is wonderful because then we can really have a wonderful conversation at the end. I do believe that the important thing about education is the exchange of ideas and being together, figuring out things. So a smaller group allows us to do that in a better way. Good morning. Okay, so today I'm going to first present a small summary of what I talked last time, and then we will look at concrete examples of things that you can share and get into the web in order to find all the necessary materials that you might be interested in having for developing critical thinking in the classroom. The last time we talked about two different ways of addressing critical thinking. On the one hand, we have it as skills, thinking skills that can be trained or that can be helped to educate with very concrete tools that teachers can use in order to make their students become clearer, give very good answers, reasons for their answers or for their thinking, debating, etc. So one way is to look at it as tools or instruments that will empower students and teachers to be more capable or competent critical minds in everyday life in order to analyze and or decide in a correct way. The second way of addressing critical thinking is more from a more holistic perspective, coming from critical theory, where the purpose of critical thinking does involve an ethical dimension, not only individually, but especially a social ethical dimension. Through communicative action, such as what Habermas proposes, this perspective aims to empower the voices in society that are traditionally ignored, directly or indirectly. Many times it is simply that people are not even aware that they do not have a voice. In political, economic, and cultural decisions, thus promoting, when that is not present, it is difficult to promote the necessary freedom to achieve the development of all. And there I'm talking of freedom like in the sense that Amartya Sen talks about freedoms. What I do want to emphasize is that these two approaches are necessarily very intertwined. They depend on each other. The first is tremendously useful as tools. When you don't have these tools, it's far more difficult to develop all these ideas. But the second one does ring bells, telling people when certain voices are not even being considered. And so a true democratic participation of all is not really taking place. What the second one does is ring us a bell and remind us that when we are using these tools, did you remember about gender? Or did you remember about the cultural context in which these people are involved? Or these kinds of ideas where the important thing is to make sure that everybody is the voice of those involved in the decisions that are needed to be in a decision that will be powerful for all are represented, that everyone has heard those voices. Because without the first, arguments may become nothing but mere criticism or opinions, often ideologized and with little freedom to think with autonomy. That we see a lot in Latin America, of people that think that critical theory in being critical is a matter of blaming, I don't know whom, the government or whoever, those that have more power, either economic or social or political, which it is true. Many times it is very important to look at those relationships, but it is also very, very important to be self-critical and be able to understand the system as a system and to be able to participate in decision-making that involves all. All means all the people in society, not throwing away half of the population or whatever. Without the second one, critical tools can turn into mere instruments that can favor an unjust state of affairs of which critical thinkers may not even be aware of because of ideology. They can lose their potential to liberate from what prevents the personal, economic, emotional, legal, political, and intellectual development of many. What does all this then mean in the classroom? That is the theoretical part, but then how does that look in the classroom? How can we educate autonomous people that are really inclined to problem-solving, multidimensional, systemic, and reflexive critical thinking, who are interested in understanding the interrelationships between the various disciplines to make them serve the common good and freedom in order for society to be more humane and fair? The first thing that I would suggest is simply go to the internet, to Google, and find critical thinking. I was delighted to see that you can find that the English version of critical thinking is different from the one that they have in Spanish in the Wikipedia, and it's different in French. And they are, again, very mutually enriching. It's very interesting to read all of them. And so I would suggest to you to first go to Wikipedia and look at what they have, just put critical thinking, and then go further down and you will find all kinds of different alternatives that are out there ready to be used, especially the Richard Paul and Linda Elker, for instance, have a very interesting website. It's called, well, it's there. You can see it for yourself. And also the one by Peter Facioni, who gave away freely for everyone to use a lot of the tools that he has developed over the years. It's fantastic, and I think he has been very generous in offering these tools to everyone who wants to download them, as long as they say that they belong to him and they don't use them for economic purposes to sell them or whatever. But so there I put all the names of different people that you can look for in Colombia, for instance. Also, Jose Hipólito González Zamora has a very interesting alternative in the Eduteca, sorry. And my friends at Project Zero have done wonderful work in both in the teaching for understanding and in the thinking dispositions that David Perkins and Sherry Tishman, together with Ron Richard and Albert Andrade, they all worked a lot of these wonderful tools that you can use. And Patricia Leon and Maria Jimena Barrera will talk to you about those tools and give all kinds of examples in future presentations. I think next month probably they will show you all that they have produced at Project Zero and that Patricia and Maria Jimena have translated. Also, Carlos Eduardo Rasco will be giving ideas on critical thinking in mathematics and giving wonderful examples of things that they have developed with sine for very young preschoolers that are just fantastic to show how the mind really works and how you can educate a child's mind towards a much deeper and greater understanding. So go to these places and enjoy working with these ideas. The other are the didactic alternatives to develop autonomy, freedom, justice, and care. And what I have been able to see and experience is that most constructivist and cognitive pedagogies really work in developing all these possibilities. Certainly, Constance Camille and Eleanor Duckworth have worked a lot in making people become autonomous in their way of thinking, in being able to think for themselves by engaging in problems that they themselves are interested in solving, and where when they come from the questions that really wonder them and intrigue them and that they want to be able to solve, they automatically become interested in the ideas and the solutions that their colleagues, that their friends, that their little classmates give, because they are all wanting to solve the same thing. So the ideas of the others indeed help to be able to understand problems in a better way. In that sense, the relationships in which they are involved in solving something become automatically horizontal instead of vertical. Instead of having the teacher who knows that tells the answer to things, it is rather people together trying to solve something where the voices of all matter because they can help solve the problem. And also, and most importantly, is that when an answer is really not that good, the ones who receive that answer, no, but this is happening. This isn't so good because of this, that, or whatever. We need to go deeper. We need something even better. And so the mind of everyone is really seeking for a better answer. That creates a far deeper knowledge than when a mind is just working by itself, doing its own little thing. In this conversation among people, the relationships change and become democratic in the true sense of the word. And I think that that's very important. Also, the ideas developed, for instance, by Kohlberg have been very important in moral dilemmas. Having dilemmas is a way of discussion that really improves moral development. And since we have seen that moral development is very important for critical theory, developing the school in thinking about these problems in the relationships that people are in, making decisions, how are decisions made in the classroom, how are they made in the school, how is that related to what is going on at home, become very, very important and possible to work at the school level. A marvelous example that, as I suggested above, to look at the tools that developed and that you can find in critical thinking, you can also find wonderful examples of work done in group by students working together to solve problems in critical explorers. There's a website called Critical Explorers org that has been developed by Elena Duckworth and many of her colleagues and or former students that are now colleagues that are working on classes that involve questions that the whole group is trying to solve together. For instance, how can you use the tool, historical tool? This is an example of a class that was done in Maine with some primary sources of history written by a captain that was exploring the coast of Maine, and they found a group of Indians and the kind of relationship that they had together. The wonderful thing of what the teachers did with that primary resource was that they put all the people, all the students, they were, believe it or not, fifth grade students, reading this primary source First, the teacher read it. Then the students read them by themselves silently. Then each one would read one of the sentences, since it was in Old English, but then they were beginning to make sense of the reading all together, doing it several times. And then they drew a map of what was being presented in the reading, and after drawing their map, each person, they shared with the person at the side and did some corrections to their own interpretation of the map. And then, further on, they began looking at all the maps of everyone else and asking how, and looking at the differences between what they had drawn and what others had drawn, to understand why they had understood it the way that they had understood it. And so each person was then, after listening to the ways of interpreting the reading, they went back to the reading and then drew a second map. And you can't imagine how empowered everybody was, that their map was a social construction by everyone understanding what really had happened, and or the best way that they were capable of understanding at that moment what really had happened, and the kind of map that they were capable of producing at that moment. It was wonderful because it was a way of sharing that is authentic, for knowledge is taking place, and it's a constructive, together knowledge that makes the relationships in creating knowledge very horizontal, democratic, and possible of being critical. Another example is of the way that critical thinking in citizenship competencies was used in Colombia in the program for citizenship competencies, where people use their communicative, cognitive, emotional skills or competencies. We were able to see that communication, good communication, always depends not only on cognitive skills, but also on emotional ones, especially when it comes to civic or citizenship capabilities, possibilities of sharing, of listening to others, of being able to come to good working solutions for all in making, I don't know, for instance, the norms that are necessary in the classroom. In all of these, you need not only cognitive skills, but also emotional ones, where when you are aware of these emotions and how they are affecting the way that you think, you can really communicate in a much better way with the other in order to be able to come to a solution that is good for everyone. And so people use their communicative, cognitive, emotional skills or competencies and their knowledge. One does need to know about government, about norms, about law, about the things that make people move. psychology is also important, knowledge, in order to propose smarter, more creative, comprehensive, fair, and empathic alternatives to solve social problems. This develops their willingness to peaceful coexistence. Notice the willingness to peaceful coexistence, for participation and democratic responsibility, and for plurality, identity, and appreciation of differences within the framework of respect for human rights and the common good. You can find the citizenship competency developed in Colombia at the Ministry of Education platform of Colombia. Look for citizenship competencies and you will find all kinds of alternatives there. So we have the cognitive, emotional, communicative, and knowledge that when integrated together in one task or in doing something, one performance will develop citizenship in students and in teachers. And we emphasize the importance again of looking at the kinds of relationships that are taking place in the classroom. For instance, is the teacher listening to the students? Is he or she exemplifying a way of making sense together? Or is that person simply speaking by herself or by himself, not really caring on how the other is understanding? What kinds of relationships come from those two kinds of relationships? What kinds of values are transmitted through the way that people relate to each other? Because it is through the way that you relate that you really teach values. What is going on in the school? How are the relationships between the teachers and the directors of the school? How much are they listened to? How much are the students able to participate in school decisions? What are the kinds of relationships that take place between the schools and the local authorities? And what are the relations between local authorities and ministries or secretaries of education in the country? How does that work? And how does that work at the international level? I mean, looking at these relationships and caring about them and making visible how they are influencing the kinds of values that people are living in is very important to develop critical thinking in a democratic environment. Other kinds of examples that took place in Colombia, those are the ones that I know of, since I live here and I've been working with teachers for many years, are examples where teachers, you can find also these at the Ministry of Education platform of Colombia, in a book called 15 experiencias de educación ciudadana y una más, 15 experiences of citizenship education and one more. where how they were using programs that either they themselves had created, such as the 13 Apostles from Algarrobo, where this marvelous teacher had to go to a place where a lot of violence had taken place, and she was so scared and frightened, and she tells her own experience, and how the people themselves there helped by creating the history of the past years in that community, working it together and being part of a group, a whole group of the school with people in the community, writing their history, writing what had happened, figuring out how they could solve these things and why the school mattered, and sharing it every week with other people who would come and enjoy what they were doing. Together with really being a director who felt that she had to be very demanding on both the teachers and the parents, and not just get away with not really being very rigorous in everything that they were doing. That figure also helped to create the necessary discipline so that, for instance, this history writing together gave marvelous results with very good writing that everybody could finally read and be connected to. The same with the curriculum of legality that worked with all problems in Colombia, for instance, that are so important to be able to discuss when people have been involved with drugs, not only at the personal level of consuming drugs, but that know people who also sell drugs and things of that nature. And so being able to look at a curriculum of legality where they could understand the whole framework of a country that gets into such a terrible mess because there are a few people drug trafficking and then getting all the money into the whole social system so that they can become accepted. And the problem of people accepting all that, together with the daily little lives of what happens with the students in their homes, teenagers that might be tempted to get into the drugs. That relationship of what they were studying with daily life, going back and forth, reading interesting books or watching pictures such as Goodfellas by Scorsese, or the book, right now I forget the name of these boys that were landed in the island and had to create their own laws and all that. Working theoretically in the classroom about knowledge that can go into everyday life of the students in a way that the students can then bring what is happening in their life to the discussion theoretical that is taking place in the classroom, can be very, very, very powerful in order to develop something that makes sense to all those involved. And one last example that I want to share that I think is very powerful is how at the Ministry of Education itself, we were very worried of if we are developing democracy and citizenship competencies, how is the ministry itself being democratic and competent in developing that in the relationships with the secretaries of education at the local level and with the students and the teachers themselves. So we said it, well, we did two very important things. One was, even though we certainly did create standards that were very important so that people would have an idea of what was necessary to develop in students at different levels, we also did think a lot of people in Colombia are doing wonderful work in the schools. They have marvelous programs that we should, instead of telling everybody what to do, show what all these other programs are doing, make them visible, tell the schools to connect with each other so they can use what is being done in other places. Let's show their material. Let's show the curriculum that they develop, the books, etc. And so we did a portfolio of programs from, I don't know, from UNESCO, from different institutions that have created marvelous material and solutions. The Program for Development of Peace in the Magdalena Medio region has marvelous experiences. So how can we use all this for other schools to rather use what already has been done instead of having the ministry tell everyone how to do things? And the second example was the Sexuality and Citizenship program, where the ministry was creating and developing a program, also as one of the other examples possible, but this one created by the ministry, but where it was developed not top-down, just by the experts knowing how to do things, but rather with the local people, with schools at the local level in 5 different localities of Colombia, working with the teachers, the students, the people from the teachers from the university that accompanied the schools working together, and with the secretaries of education or their delegates in creating all together the sex and citizenship program, so that they created a model and an example of how to decide what kind of program to create in other schools. And Cecilia Maria Vélez, the minister who at first was saying, this is not what needs to be done at the ministry, because the ministry needs to give guidance and not create as if we were a kind of university creating programs. By the end, she said the most important program that the ministry created was precisely the Sexuality and Citizenship program, because it was amazing how others then could indeed replicate that model in other localities of Colombia. So those are the examples that I wanted to give you. And if anyone wants to to in the future, right, or whatever, I have my email address so that we can share ideas. So let's enter into the discussion and hear what you want to say and how you want to participate.
Thank you very much, Rosario, for your presentation. It was really useful and really fruitful. As Rosario is saying in this moment, if you have any questions, please write them down in the chat. Or if you have anything to share with us, do it so.
Or questions or doubts or things that you disagree with or whatever. I can see that Lina Rangel has something to say, but is there any way that we can see that, Valentina?
Where is she writing it?
I see after attendees, Lina Rangel has, there's a question mark by her name. I don't know if that has. She asked, this attendee asked a question.
Oh yes, I can see here. So Norma says a strategy to use when there has been no development of thought in a student's 10 years of age.
Excuse me?
I'm going to copy it. Norma wrote it in the questions and answers tab. So I'm going to share it on our chat. There it is. That's what she says, a strategy to use when there has been no development of thought in students 10 years of age. I guess she's asking about if you know of any strategy to use with students from 0 to 10 years.
Well, but the most important thing is that I would say at the beginning certainly is to ask questions to students about whatever it is that that teacher would want the students to understand better. Why? The teacher can ask herself or himself, why is that important for the students to understand? What exactly do I want them to understand? And how can I know if they are understanding that? And then that way, by asking questions to the students and listening to the ways that they are understanding, giving the answers to what they are addressing, you can really come to understand how exactly they are thinking. And probably others will immediately intervene. That way, what a teacher really has to be able to do is to carry diaries where he or she can annotate the ways that she is seeing that her students are understanding. Little sentences of things that they said. And so little by little, you can become aware by looking at the different sentences in a week or in 2 weeks of how they are making connections. What exactly are they understanding and how are they doing it? To me, the most important thing in a classroom is asking questions and having a follow-up. Now, another very, very practical thing that one can do is that always after a classroom ends, each class, ends, have 10 minutes to think, what happened during this class? When someone asked, what was that interesting? When did we all lose our connection? Or when did someone felt that his or her question was stupid or not interesting enough, but then that person did not want to participate any longer? How were we feeling when someone said something that really made us again stand up and think? Or, what were the interesting and positive moves to develop a good classroom by all of us, by the teacher and by the students, and by writing that down, what happened in that classroom, every day, in every class, we just talk about how we felt and what happened, what was really good and powerful, what was the opposite that detained the progress. That is an amazing tool to make us aware that we are all learning and how we are learning.